What's up, you guys? It's Kurt Stubbs back with another blast from the past here at the Ohio High School Hoops Around the State podcast. We're going to continue on in our Division 4 theme here. We have Mr. Jason Ronai. Most of you will remember him. I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you remember him from Springfield Catholic Central days. Jason, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, Kurt. I'm glad to be talking to you. Anytime that you get a chance to talk about the glory days, it's a really, really neat thing. And, you know, credit to you because over the last week and a half, the amount of connection that I've had with my high school teammates and my coaches just to say, hey, we get a chance to talk about this and to find my ring again and wear it for about the third time since 1996. It's really special, and it's really neat for our community as well. And they're all going to be excited just to relive some of the stories and hear about it. So thanks for having me. It's really neat to be here.
Yeah, on a personal note, you've got some good stuff going on right now, huh?
Sure do. Yes, we have I was married a year ago. And to the wonderful Jessie Weingartner, who's a principal here in Chicago. That's where I'm living now. Her father actually was a mentor of mine, Tom Weingartner. He's a retired athletic director at the University of Chicago. So I actually got to know him before I got to know her. And we have a daughter on the way in September. And so I'm going to have a 13-year-old and a 0-year-old in the house. As you know the story, Kurt, we go way back. My first wife, Krista, passed away in 2016. So Anna, my daughter, and I have been on our own for the last 4 years. But God is good, life is good, and things are going well.
Yeah, I mean, you've had quite the journey since your graduation there in 1996. What where did the road take you after that?
Yeah, it's I'll try not to take up the whole podcast with that journey right there. But 1996, I went on to I got a Division I basketball scholarship to St. Peter's, and I was also I was a good baseball player as well, and I part of the deal with St. Peter's was also playing baseball at St. Peter's. So I was there on a basketball scholarship, but was also going to play baseball. In the process, though, I realized that I had a real urge to maximize my ability as a baseball player. And, you know, at my size, at 5'10", in skill positions in both sports, I really just wanted to see how far I could take baseball. And I was heavily recruited by UNC Asheville, a Division I school in the Big South in North Carolina, out of high school. And so decided to, I did not play baseball at St. Peter's that senior year, so I could keep my 4 years of eligibility. And went to UNC Asheville, got to play against SEC and ACC teams. It was a beautiful experience. Started for 4 years, had a good career there. Did play a year of independent professional baseball. So I got a paycheck, albeit very small, to play professional baseball, but I got a check, and then went on into a college coaching career in baseball. So my goal was to be the Coach K of college baseball, and I coached at Indiana State University, and then at Navy, at the U.S. Naval Academy. I was a teacher and an officer and a coach at Navy, and things were going well, and I had some options. I was offered the head coaching position at Denison, turned that down, and was just kind of eager to continue to grow and build. And then 3 weeks after our daughter was born in 2009, my first wife, Krista, was diagnosed with brain cancer. And so that changed everything for us at that time, and then effectively ended my college coaching career, because, you know, when you're coaching at that level, you got to travel to all corners of the country to recruit Division I baseball players to Navy. And so had to change gears. And so we, as we used to like to say, we took our talents to Chicago. After that, I got a teaching position, assistant principal position at a new high school here in Chicago called Chicago Bulls College Prep. And it was a chance for us to be in a city, and they had only given her about 2 to 5 years to live after the diagnosis. And so we just wanted to maximize our time and try to lay low. And they even asked me to be the high school basketball coach. I didn't have to travel very much. I didn't have to go recruit. So I was able to continue coaching for about 6 years. And so we had some success and had a good 6-year run at Chicago Bulls College Prep. And, I spent 1 year I'm on national TV coaching in the Army Navy baseball game. And the next year I'm in the smallest of small gyms in Chicago, and it's just me and the boys. And I loved every second of it. My greatest coaching experience that I ever had, without question. The cancer came back with a vengeance in 2015, and so I had to step down. And then Krista passed shortly after. Since then, I've been from 2016 until now. I'm a district athletic director here in Chicago, so I oversee the athletics and physical education for 17 high schools here in the city.
Yeah, a couple things that you hit on there. You may or may not know this or remember it, but I want to say it was probably the 2015 state tournament. You actually were sitting by my dad in the crowd, right. And I, just lost track of, you lose track of people, and I really had no idea where or what the life path took for you. I kind of was following that a little bit, and I don't think it was too long after that your first wife had passed away.
It was a couple months later.
Yeah, and I know you don't want to make this, but I mean that's got to be, with the appointments and things like that. It's and probably just always being on edge of what's going to happen next. I mean, that had to be a huge adjustment. I believe, was she 35?
35. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, when you're in your early to mid 30s, it's not something that you're ever expecting.
Right.
But
yeah, it was, it was endless, waking up every day and not exactly knowing how things were going to go. And I think that, we all have a cap on our lives, but we don't know exactly what that is.
Right.
And there is a difference when you actually know when that cap is. And I think that we did the best we could to maximize the time that we had and to be parents of Anna and help with that transition for her. And it was no question. It was very difficult for myself, for our family, for so many. But I can say that I think we did an incredible job in the journey as the family, and I think most importantly, set up our daughter Anna to transition well. And she's been doing very, very well, and we're so very proud of her.
Yeah, I know you have a good support system, especially with your immediate family. And it's interesting because you played baseball at UNC Asheville, and some years later, your brother ends up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was an assistant basketball coach at UNC Asheville right before he became the head basketball coach at Mount Vernon Nazarene University, where he's been for about 7 years. And as you know, we grew up in a coaching family. Mm-hmm. Our dad coached from the time I was born. He was a high school basketball coach in Indiana, coached a great number of years in college and high school. Has over 500 wins in college and high school, and so he's an incredible resource to Jared, and was to me as a basketball coach, because 500 wins is 500 wins. Yep. When you've been a part of that many games and experiences, you just see things differently. And he's an incredible consultant to my brother, and a truth teller. He'll say when things are going well and when they're not, and it's a really neat resource to have.
Yeah, your brother is doing an outstanding job up there at Mount Vernon Naz. I know he's it's more than basketball for him. He's built a family culture up there, and unfortunately for you guys, he married a player that's better than than all of you guys. So he kind of screwed you guys all over with that.
That's I am biased. I will say I think Jared Ronai is one of the best college basketball coaches in the business, and he has created an incredible culture there, and it's really neat to see. And you can tell by some of the recruits that he's been getting out of Ohio. And he did marry the former Kristen Doherty, who Jared was an all-state point guard. In fact, he's got this great little clip where the all-state team of Division II has LeBron James and Jared Ronai in it. I was an all-state basketball player and baseball player, and I think he was Central Ohio Player of the Year as a senior. And then Kristen comes into the family, and she's two-time Miss Basketball, Hall of Fame at the University of Dayton. And so literally like our accolades pale in comparison. and it's not even an argument of who the best athlete in the family is at this point.
Yeah. So, so growing up, like, did you, what was your first recollection of playing basketball? Were you into it right away because your father was into coaching, or how was that for you?
I was into it right away. My mother tells a great story about when my father was coaching at Massanutten Military Academy in Virginia, and I was 3 at the time, and it was prior to a game. They could not find me. They were looking everywhere, and they started getting people to go outside the gym to look through the hallways. Where was Jason? And there's about 5 minutes left to go. And finally, they look in the one place that they should have looked all along. I was underneath the basket rebounding for some of the players on my dad's team at that time. And they literally took me out and took me back to the stands. So it's been a family thing all throughout. He went on to Mars Hill College and then Urbana University after that. And I have great memories. We were, his players are big brothers to us. One of his former players now is Mark Eversley, who's the GM of the Bulls now. And so many players have gone on to great successes in their life, and we still keep up with everybody. And it was just an incredible childhood. I was the epitome of a coach's son. Could shoot the ball really well. Knew every ball handling drill that existed. So I actually don't remember a time in which basketball and baseball wasn't a part of our everyday life.
So how did you end up at Springfield Catholic Central?
My father got the head basketball coaching position and athletic director position at Urbana University in 1985. And so that was probably, it's about 15 minutes from where we lived to Springfield Catholic Central. There wasn't going to be much doubt that I was going to be going to Catholic Central, even though we technically lived in Urbana and not Springfield then. And my father grew up, we were Catholic. Father grew up at all boys Catholic schools all throughout. Now there was a point in which I was in love with Chaminade Julienne High School in the early 90s. I went to all of their camps. Coach Ricciuto was actually, who our high school basketball coach at Catholic Central, was an assistant at Chaminade Julienne. That was when they made a couple great state runs.
Mm-hmm.
Then had the 3-guard offense, and Chris McGuire was on that team. Camacho was on that team, and it was just so much fun to watch. I went to their camps and was very much thinking of trying to go there. It just was too far away, and we had a guy by the name of Jason Collier who was also going to be attending Catholic Central. And I got to know a lot of our teammates in middle school, and played with them in CYO basketball. And it just kind of came together there.
Now, was Jason always lined up to go to Springfield Catholic as well?
He was. And, I think a lot of people in the community will find this very funny, Kurt, because being a Catholic school, you're often accused of recruiting players and things like that. And so the fact that I lived in Urbana, Tony Silvers, Tyson Yirak, Jason Collier lived in Northridge, which is a community just right outside of Springfield. I think Tommy Hannon was the only starter that lived in Springfield. And so because of that, people thought, well, they must be going to Catholic Central for free. They must have been recruited. Couldn't be further from the truth. Nobody seemed to recognize that Jason Collier's mother was also a graduate of Catholic Central. And so that's how he ended up there.
Yeah, for some of my younger listeners, Jason Collier, was the centerpiece of this team. 7-footer, Mr. Basketball, McDonald's All-American, two-time All-Conference guy at Georgia Tech, drafted 15th overall to the Bucks, but he never played in Milwaukee. They traded him to Houston. He was, the guy that most people would remember, from that team, along with yourself. And you guys get into high school, and I'd ask you about your sophomore year, because you guys were in Division III that year, and I don't know why I had overlooked it, but you guys lost to Versailles, ended your season that year, and I think you told me they beat you. Was that the second time they had beat you that year?
Versailles was in our conference at the time.
Okay.
That was the old Southwestern Rivers Conference.
Right.
And so we lost to them earlier in the year. We lost to them in Tip City that year in conference, and then faced them again in the regional semifinals and lost to them there. Yeah,
they had at that point in time, they had and still do, an incredible run of athletes at that point in time. They were just running the show in football.
And they also seemed to play all the sports.
They
went from football to basketball to baseball and were good in everything.
Yeah, I remember watching a guy, I think his name was Jason Turner, went on to play baseball at Ohio State, and they had told me he was an incredible swimmer as well. And I was like, what is this guy? There's nothing he can't do.
Jason Turner was, we actually played college summer baseball together for 1 or 2 seasons in Delaware in a college wood and bat league. And we developed a good relationship just playing against each other in basketball. And I think that they had a year of football, baseball state championships, sophomore or basketball regional finals in the same year. They were so much fun to play. There's some good stories about playing at Versailles for sure.
So you guys go into your junior year, and I'm sure expectations are pretty high because you're bumping down to Division IV now. And you guys make a big run that year. What was the schedule like your junior year? Was it as daunting as the schedule you set up for you guys as seniors?
Well, we had a couple games that were different for Springfield Catholic Central. We played Washington D.C. Dunbar. Had a player by the name of Mike Gill that went to Pitt and then Cal Berkeley after high school. We played him in the Coaxial National Hoops Classic in Columbus, we actually, I think we were leading in the third quarter of that game. They ended up pulling away in the fourth quarter. And then we got a chance to play. We went to Cincinnati Moeller. And I think, anytime I've mentioned that Springfield Catholic Central played Cincinnati Moeller, eyebrows kind of raised a little bit because we all know the tradition of Moeller and all the success they've had over the years. And Carl Kramer was the coach. And I'll never forget, that was one of the more unique opportunities that we had because, Moeller just had the aura. And we were in their old gym. They had a 35-game home winning streak. And here we were with, mostly a junior laden team. We had one senior, Andy Kiger, on that team. And we go in and we upset Moeller at their place and break a 35-game home winning streak. And even in that game, Carl Kramer still talks to Coach Ricciuto and says he's still upset about that game because they held Collier to 15 points and they held me to 7 points. And then Tony Silvers erupts for 18 points on 6 threes. And we beat them by 5 at their place. And just Moeller walking out of the gym, as they came out to warm-ups, the old Darth Vader song, they had the band playing it, and they just walked out on the court. And even us as players were going, that's one of the neatest things we've ever seen. We loved it. And it was incredible to play there. And then, of course, they come back the next year and play us at our place.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be crazy to think, Springfield Central Catholic is playing at Moeller, especially if you told people that nowadays, with the success Moeller's had in the last 5-10 years. Well, actually longer than that, but recent success, they've really killed it over the last 5 years. But
no question. We often say we're the only team in the state of Ohio that's undefeated versus Cincinnati Moeller. We just leave off the 2-0 part.
Don't play them again. Yeah. Right. So you guys, you make a great run that year. You get into the state tournament, and you get up against Delphos St. John's, who has a lot of history with Bob Arnzen. When there's an award named after you, you've done something. You've done something.
No question.
But this game, this had to be, and I'm sure you've played in front of some big crowds, but 12,999 was, I'm assuming, the biggest crowd that you had seen to date at St. John Arena, the mecca of high school basketball in Ohio.
No question. No question. That was really special, Kurt. That was really special. We weren't moving into Division IV that year. It was hard to know what to expect. Like, we actually didn't really know how good we were. We knew we had some talent. We knew we had some depth. But we were still just, kind of feeling out what it was going to be. And we had a tough game in the regional semifinals against Fort Loramie. It was really neat to play Fort Loramie in the state tournament, and then Russia in the regional final. But to get to St. John Arena, I mean, I had been going to St. John Arena with my father. He was there recruiting. I had been going there since I was probably 9 or 10 years old. And I always looked at, St. John Arena, I would do anything to see a state championship basketball game back in that arena. It is so incredibly special. And I always knew as a kid, I always looked at those rims and thought, they just look like good shooting rims. They look soft. They look like it's St. John Arena is taller, like it's a taller arena. Therefore, I was like, the backboard or the background must be great for shooters because we saw so many incredible performances there. You just saw great performances. And to actually be out on that floor with my dad in the stands and be at St. John Arena and actually be there when I was always up there in the stands was so special. And we knew, we were facing Delphos St. John's, and we knew what they were about. We knew their tradition, and we were ready.
Yeah, it's hard to describe unless you've grown up in that basketball environment and just what that meant to somebody when they actually got to play at St. John Arena. Because most people, they go to the state tournament every year, and that's as far as it goes. They're in the crowd, they got a seat, but you actually get down there on the floor. Do you remember what it was like when you went out for warm-ups? Was it like almost surreal?
It's the one experience I can say it was everything I thought it would be. I just wanted to, the only view I wanted was to look up under the scoreboard just to see what it looked like from there.
Yeah.
And it was everything. The smell, the lights, the way the ball bounced off the floor. It was one of the neatest experiences I've ever had in sports. And I remember being in warm-ups and looking up at my family and seeing my dad in the stands there. And my little brother was a ball boy on that team, and for him to be on the floor, I remember I found a way to help my brother Jared get up a couple shots really quick.
Oh, you got to. So the big stage obviously did not affect you because you drilled 7 threes in this game and ended up with 36 points. Jason had 29, and you guys pulled away for a 72-55 victory in this game. Was it, one of those things where you just, you got hot and you knew it was going in?
Well, I think, like I said, I thought for so many years that they must be good shooting rims, and also I give a lot of credit to Coach Ricciuto because he before the game, we were in warm-ups, and they called me. He called me Ronai back then. He goes, Ronai, you know the Division IV record for threes is only 6. He goes, go take care of that. And so, you know, when you're kind of given like that more than green light from your coach to go do it, it worked out well. And but that was one of those things where like that was just a special half, first half for me. Everything fell. Like, I mean, I even got like a rebound and put something back up at 5'9" back then, and had 24 points in the first half, and we were just hitting everything. Collier was hitting everything, and we were lucky that I think we came out very excited, and we were fresh and green, and felt like we belonged there, and we just got off to a great start. And that team, I mean, Delta St. John's had made an incredible run. They were, I think, 5-14 going into the state tournament, and made this incredible run just to get there. But I think that we were just, from a size standpoint, and the fact that we shot the ball so darn well that time, I think we were just a bit too much.
Yeah, I mean, incredible performance for your first ever state tournament. And then you got a team that was not a deer in headlights when you played them. I had AJ Granger on last year to talk about that season. And this is a team that is very similar to what you and Lincoln View went through with. They lost to the state champions in the regional the year before, to Upper Scioto Valley. And they come back, senior-laden team. Now AJ was a junior. And AJ, you know, a lot of people will remember AJ playing at Michigan State. But, you know, this team was Andy Butler's team. There's no doubt about it. I think I told AJ this, I think he's one of the most underrated players to ever come through the OHSAA. I mean, he is fantastic. He was fantastic. And
part of that was because he went to play college baseball.
Yeah.
And so there's no telling what kind of college career he could have had as a basketball player.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, Butler was the one that we were keying on the most, and obviously, we felt good about our matchup with Granger because we had Collier. We had a 7-footer out there that was all state, and we felt good about that matchup. And then, but everywhere else, like their size was a significant factor for us, and they were just, as you and I have discussed, there's just a great difference between high school basketball players as juniors and seniors. The amount of growth that you make. I mean, it's rare that anybody looks at, you don't often hear that basketball team or those players had a better junior season than they did a senior season, or they were better players than juniors and seniors, because you have so much physical maturity that takes place. And they were just big, and they were strong, and they were good, and they were very confident too. And, to their credit, they extended on a 1-3-1 zone. They used their guard height to the advantage. They took away some things from us, and I think they really did a great job of just kind of taking away some of our strengths. We hung in there through 3 quarters, and then the wheels fell off in the third quarter, and they took that big lead. And they just weren't a team that was going to. They were a team they were not going to give up a lead.
Yeah, I think much like you guys the following year, they were just a team on a mission, and they were not going to be stopped. They did not lose a game that whole year. And you look at Butler, he had 31 in that game, but I think, Matt Moser was definitely an X factor, a big guy, energy guy. Interesting, if you can put yourself back in that time, even yourself as a guard, you look at Collier and Granger, big guys weren't doing what those guys were doing back then. They could step out and knock down shots. And even, like I said, at the guard position, you hit 7 threes. Teams still weren't centered around the 3-point shot in the mid-90s. So, that's a big number.
Yeah, I mean, our junior year team, we had 210 3-pointers as a team. and returned all of those 3-point shooters for our senior year. And I was talking with Coach Ricciuto, and as a former high school basketball coach, if you tell me before a game your team's gonna hit 7 threes, I'm like, this is fantastic. I'll take it. Our junior year team averaged 7.5 threes, 7.5 makes a game, which is an incredible number for a high school team. I thought that we were, as a team, Coach Ricciuto was very big on quality shots. It was, we certainly were going to get the ball into the post and get it to Collier as many times as we possibly could, but it was mostly about layups and 3-pointers. So I think that we had a style that encouraged that, but even today's game has even far surpassed that. So
yeah, you said layups and 3-pointers, and immediately I thought of today's game, because that's kind of the way that systems are created now. But when I look at this game, and I'll finish this game because I want to get into the senior season, but you mentioned that third quarter 20-6 advantage for them, and I think they only held a 5-point halftime lead in this game. But the big thing I think was the free throw line, where they were 20 of 26 and you were only 7 of 10. I mean, that's a big discrepancy in free throw makes. But I just got the sense when I talked to Granger that, and it was 25 years later, but they had that 5-point halftime lead. I think they kind of felt like you guys did the following year. I don't think they ever thought that you guys were going to win.
No, and I think they played that way too. I mean, I think they were very composed. I mean, similar to our senior year, for as good as Lincoln View was in our senior year, it was tight in the third quarter, but it just, and I say this in the most humble of ways, we were just very confident. We trusted ourselves.
Right.
We weren't concerned as to what was going to happen in that game. And that's part of being a senior and having so much experience. So yeah, they did a great job of with that 1-3-1 zone and with the height. They got us to pass the ball around and over the top. Like we weren't getting into gaps very well, and it kept us off the free throw line. They were just a great defensive team and did exactly what they needed to do to keep us from being able to make any run.
Yeah, I said this many times, but that run from like 95 to 97 was such a great run for Division IV, as far as just 3 great basketball teams. And I would put those teams, along with St. Henry, up against any of these teams I've seen in the last 20 years. And that's no disrespect to those teams. That's just how good you guys were. So,
yeah, I agree. Thank you for that.
You guys, you come into this senior season, but before the senior season, I'm sure with a guy like Collier, as far as the recruiting thing, I'm sure that was getting out of control with a guy that's 7 foot.
Well, yeah, and even I would love to, that journey from the time that we lost to Liberty Benton. I mean, that was as rigorous and pressured and unique and fun and exciting of a journey as any kid could go through. And I think it's important. If you don't mind, I'd love to just read off the roster going into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really, it's important. Our families and our community in Springfield are going to love hearing about this. And for our kids who have been hearing some stories from us now, I think it's important. Myself, Mike Talbott, Patrick Shuddy, Chris Wells, Robbie Moore, Tyson Yirak, Tom Hannon, Shane Evilsizer, Matt Talbott, Jon Powell, Tony Silvers, Jason Collier, Nathan Weber, Matt Weber, Dan George, and then Ryan Dietrich and Andy Murphy were student assistants. They both had suffered some injuries that year. And then, of course, our coaching staff, Tony Ricciuto, Gary Falkenbach, Kevin Weckesser, and Coach Frank Smith. When we left the arena, when we left St. John Arena, we were out in the foyer area outside. I think we had the early game that year, and everybody was saying, "Keep your head up, you'll be back. Keep your head up, you'll be back. We got this next year." And that's wonderful to hear. And when you're 17, that's an enormous amount of pressure. Like, we knew the expectations and we were realistic about the expectations. We had 4 starters coming back for next year. And so that journey literally began that morning. And our coaching staff did an incredible job of putting us in situations where over the course of those 2 years, AAU basketball wasn't nearly what it was today. And Coach Ricciuto and the staff made sure that our 5 or 6 or 7 were going to every open gym that we could have. We had open gyms, Kurt, in Springfield, Ohio at that time that are legendary. We're talking, we hosted the open gyms, and it was basically everybody bring your best 5 over to it. Brooke Cups, who was playing for Graham at that time period, would bring his 5 over. John Carson and John Gaines from Springfield South. John Carson's a legend in Springfield. John Gaines, I think, was probably the second best player behind Collier in the city of Springfield that year. A lot of people don't know he was actually the leading scorer on South. Went on to be Division II National Player of the Year at Charleston. They were coming over. Springfield North, Eric Thomas, Chris Strodes, both big-time basketball players. I think Thomas went to Kent State. Kids from Dayton were coming over, CJ players. Wittenberg was bringing their basketball team over. And we were just having these incredible open gyms. Then going into, we played in something called the Victory Summer League. And so here you have Springfield Catholic Division IV versus Alter, CJ, Fairmont, Northmont, Wayne, Trotwood, Madison, Centerville, Springboro, and maybe a couple others. Obviously, great competition in that. Jason and I had a chance. Jason was obviously, he was gaining national significance. We went to the 5-star basketball camp that summer, which was the camp to go to. You had to be invited to it. Brandon Pardon was also at that same camp as where I first met him, Brandon Pardon from Lincoln View. Jason had an incredible camp there. And Kurt, the next week, we had a summer league game at Chaminade-Julienne in the Victory Summer League. Over the course of the next week, in that summer league game and in our open gyms, Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K, Dean Smith, Rick Pitino, Bob Huggins, John McLeod, who was at Notre Dame at the time, several Indiana assistants, Bobby Cremens from Georgia Tech, all were in our gym. All were watching our games. To be in a gym where Dean Smith and Rick Pitino are watching your summer league game in little Chaminade-Julienne was, I mean, I can't even explain what that environment looked like, felt like, was like. They were all great with all of our parents. They were, very, very cordial. There was one time after an open gym, Bobby Cremens brought me into the office at Catholic Central just to talk to me about levels that he thought I could play at and where I should be looking at. And Jason was I've always said, and I wrote something about this recently. He was the lead singer of this little rock band that kind of struck gold for about 2 years in Springfield, Ohio. And he had such an aura about himself and an excitement and a happiness and a joy with which he played. And he was a 7-footer who could run the floor, who could catch the ball about as good as any 7-footer could, and could shoot the 3. And so going into our senior year, he was the 6th ranked player in the country at that time. And so our following really just took off. I mean, we would have 500 people at summer league games. After we ended up running the table at that Victory Summer League, and I think we beat Wayne. I think it's really neat. I'm sure listeners are going to be like, when you put Catholic Central and you go Wayne, Moeller, Alter, CJ, it's just a unique combination.
Right.
Then we beat Wayne by about 28 points in that summer league championship. Then we got on the bus that morning or that day, went to a great summer tournament in Memphis with a lot of great teams around the country. And so our coaching staff basically said, we're not going to leave anything on the table. We're going to make our games and our practices as rigorous as we could possibly make them, get the very best schedule that we can put forth. Because we know what the expectations are. Everybody expects us not only to get back to state, but to win state. and we're going to do everything we possibly can to make sure that that happens.
Yeah, it's incredible because, in 95, which would have been in between your junior and senior year, I mean, you're talking pre-internet, pre-social media. I mean, it's got to be just surreal to have those iconic names in the gym. And, people probably don't realize nowadays, like Bobby Crimmins was a huge name back then. He had just come off of having Kenny Anderson a few years prior to that. I mean, one of the best guards to ever be recruited to play college basketball. Obviously, injuries got him, but what was Collier big at an early age? I mean, did he hit a growth spurt, or was he just constantly, a foot taller than everybody else?
He was constantly big. The first time I met Jason Collier was we didn't know we didn't know each other. We both went to the Catholic Central basketball clinic in the fourth or fifth grade, and it was like a 2 or 3 day clinic. And we saw each other, no question. Like here's me way down here, and here's him. And we knew. And then they had a one-on-one tournament, and unfortunately, they drew out of a hat, and he and I got paired up in the very first round. and I just had a hard time getting the shot off.
Right.
He was a very smart kid. Like, he knew his size and he used it well. Jason's father, Jeff Collier, played basketball at Georgia Tech. I think he's rolling at about 6'10", I think. 6'10" in the program, maybe 6'8" in real life. Jeff will listen to this and get a kick out of that. But so that's when we first met, and he was big then. I think he was 6'7" as a freshman. He played varsity as a freshman. I dressed for the varsity team as a freshman. So he was coming off the bench then. So he was always tall. But he was also a pretty good athlete. He was a great swimmer. Played some baseball. Played JV baseball his freshman year. Hit a grand slam. Got everybody to sign the ball, and then retired after that. Said, I'm going to focus on basketball.
That's the way to go out.
That's exactly right. So no, he was always tall.
And I'm sure people would love to know this, because most people just saw him as a player, whether it was high school, college, or in the pros. What kind of kid or guy was he? Like, what was his personality like?
Yeah, JC. Obviously, it's difficult, as you know. Jason, and I think probably many listeners will already know this, but Jason passed away in 2005 due to a heart condition as he was playing with the Atlanta Hawks, and that's still something that rocked the community. It rocked us as a team. It's been something that's been incredibly difficult to comprehend, difficult to find closure to, because he was such a centerpiece of that community and that city at the time. He was vibrant, and I'll do my best to talk about this and get through it. He was vibrant. He laughed a lot. His smile extended from rim to rim, and he was one that. He understood the limelight that he had, and I think incredibly so at that age, he did his best to enjoy it. Was very, very popular amongst all of us and the community and our teachers. A great, great student. Obviously, he went to Indiana and ended up at Georgia Tech, so he was really intelligent. But I mean, he focused on laughing as much as he possibly could, and with all that, incredibly competitive, which was a beautiful, beautiful combination. He was one that, regardless of his height, I would say that he was one that was going to fill up a room no matter what. He just had that type of energy, and he's one that with his stature and his size and his personality. I mean, Jason Collier's passing, hit us the same way Kobe Bryant's passing hit everybody else, right? And it's still something that we struggle with now because we never got a chance to get back together as a team on a 10-year or 15 or 20 or 25-year anniversary. And so he was an incredible human.
Yeah. And I appreciate you talking about that and him. And I know I read something, and I think you were quoted in maybe it had been the Springfield newspaper, but it was right before your 10-year reunion of this team. I know you had mentioned it was just too difficult to get together. It was too soon because he had passed on October 15th of 2005, which would have been that year of the 10th anniversary of you guys winning the state championship together. Do you remember? I'm sure it was one of those moments in time that's etched in your mind forever. Where or what you were doing when you found out about this, because he was playing in Atlanta at the time.
He was. Yeah, and I mean, we could probably do an entire podcast on the impact of Jason Collier, and I wouldn't mind it one bit, nor would everybody else. And I think we couldn't get together because he was in the NBA,
right?
And that was it was just, and we expected there to be a time in which we could. I'll read something that I wrote that I think kind of sums up the way the community, the way our teammates feel. He was best friends with Tyson Yirak on our team, great friends with Andy Murphy, who went on to be a manager at Indiana University. And I know, we all take it really, really hard. Those two take it especially hard. I was coaching at, I believe it was a Saturday morning. I was coaching at Navy, and we had it was fall practice time, coaching baseball at Navy. And so I was getting ready for an early Saturday morning practice in Annapolis. And I got a call from a friend, Doug Odell, a student, a good buddy of mine, whose father still teaches at Catholic Central. He called early. It was unusually early. And he simply goes, "Hey," he goes, "Collier passed away last night." And I just, the wave of disbelief and sadness and emotion that hit me and hit the city of Springfield, and hit the Atlanta Hawks and hit Georgia Tech basketball, but really Springfield, because he was just one of the boys in Springfield. He was one of the kids. He grew up in the community, and I would venture to say that was news that hit everybody that was close to Jason, especially in Springfield, especially at Catholic Central, as hard as any news could ever hit. Because similar to when Kobe passed last year, when they I got to do a couple interviews because we played against Kobe in our senior year. I think it was because you felt like he was indestructible.
Yeah.
It's personalities and people like that have such a vibrance to them that the reason why we think we're destructible is because we feel like there's people that are indestructible. And he was in that category. And it felt like there just was no way. I spent a couple hours that morning waiting for it to be wrong, waiting for it to be a mistake, waiting for somebody to say they thought he passed, but he really didn't. And so we as teammates went to down to Georgia, where we were the pallbearers. And so that was one of the first times that we as a team had a chance to get together, and then we had a big celebration. Kurt, if you don't mind, I think it's, I would love to read this.
Yeah.
I think it's important. I think that something that I think probably sums up the feelings that we all have and the impact that he's had in our life, and still the struggles that we have with it today. It's I've done a decent amount of writing just in terms of it's an expression. It helps with grief and whatnot, but it's basically to Jason. It's called Without Closure. On a couch in your apartment in Atlanta, about 5 years after the most glorious of our glory days, we laughed and spoke of the eventual 10-year reunion, creating a narrative of what was to be and the stories we would tell about one another, to one another, and to anybody else who would listen. But with that team, we knew many would listen. We simply talked naively of that pending reunion when all the boys would come together again, not knowing that all the boys wouldn't make it. All the boys from that great team that lived up to expectations, a great team that had a following only a few have ever experienced. The great team that refused to lose. The great team with you, the big man, the lead singer in a rock band that struck gold for 2 precious teenage years. The great team that could only be as great as it was because of you. And on that couch, we laughed freely at the legendary cartoon characters we became and the stories we were waiting to tell each other about ourselves when all the boys would come together again. But in the 9th year, you, the lead singer, the big man that was too big to be taken down, was taken down and then taken up by us, your teammates, who were asked to carry you in Georgia to your final resting place. A team that refused to lose had lost you, and it seems we can never truly win again. On that championship night so long ago, our coach asked us to cherish the moment because this team would never be together again. Of course, we, and even the coaches, only thought that was in reference to the basketball court. And in that year 9, most of the boys reunited, but painfully so. But not all of the boys, because you were no longer here. We gathered only to memorialize you in disbelief at a gym that would carry soon your name. The years continued as they do, and one of our coaches would meet you where you are, followed by another teammate. And the next time the boys try to come together again, we will once again be fewer than we expected. As year 25 brushes past, we try to grab it, to clench it for as long as life allows. But in reliving the glory days, the pain of our naivety and the missing of moments flows into our hearts like cold water meeting warm. We consume the memories of this team and you without closure, without content, because we can't ever get over all the boys not getting back together again. And so that was as a way of trying to kind of just express what it felt like to be in year 25 and still the missing of Jason, and then eventually Robbie Moore, one of our teammates that passed away, and Coach Smith, Frank Smith, who was like a second father to me, passing away. And talking with Coach Ricciuto, it's, it's something that we still can't quite comprehend all that took place. And I've had the only reoccurring dream I've ever had, Kurt, in my life is of me and Jason Collier. We're always getting ready to play. We're always suiting up. We're always in the locker room. We're always in warm-ups. We never get to play the game, but we're always there. And I think to sum that up, I just want to make sure that everybody knows the importance of Jason Collier to the history of Springfield and to Catholic Central and what he meant to hundreds and thousands of people.
Yeah, and that was beautifully written. Yeah, and that's exactly what I was hoping, because I wanted people to know, the Jason Collier outside of, the star basketball player, the star of the rock band, Mr. Basketball, McDonald's All-American, NBA player, because, all these guys are people outside of basketball is what they do. It's not who they are. And for those of you that don't know, he The cause was technically sudden cardiac rhythm disturbance, enlarged heart, which is, some of you may know, Hank Gathers, Reggie Lewis kind of had that same thing happen to them as well. But you mentioned Robbie Moore, a former teammate, also passed away. Coach Frank Smith passed away, and then you had mentioned Andy as well in this team, and he's going through some stuff as well.
Yeah.
So
Andy Murphy. Andy Murphy was a student assistant. He played in his younger years, but actually injured both of his knees in one play in an open gym, and couldn't play again. And was part of our group, was part of the gang, and went on to be a student manager actually at Indiana when Jason Collier went there with Bob Knight in Indiana. Andy Murphy also went, and Andy Murphy completed his time there. And he's now, I saw Andy Murphy 5 years ago. And then literally in the last year and a half to 2 years ago, he began, I think, to get some symptoms. And he has ALS. He has Lou Gehrig's disease. And it has consumed him quickly. And he's got an incredible message on Facebook that would be great for everybody to see in terms of his journey, his wife's journey. And also Mike Lewis, who was a player at Indiana, did an interview with Dan Dockich, former Indiana assistant that does a radio show in Indiana. Mike Lewis is now an assistant at UCLA who knows Murph, and promoted the fact that they have a GoFundMe for Andy Murphy, started by PJ Murphy, because the cost of ALS to the family is enormous.
Yeah.
And it's happening quick, and he's going through it. But I got a chance to see Andy just a few weeks back. We were actually at Jason Collier's mother passed away, and they asked us to come back and be pallbearers. So had a chance to see Andy. He's still smiling to the best of his ability, still staying positive, but going through a tremendous battle right now.
Yeah, everybody that I know, Steve McMichaels, former Chicago Bear, just came out about him having this, and it's just knowing what he looked like and now it's just incredible what that ruthless disease does in a short amount of time. And I appreciate you sharing. I mean, there's so much that went into this team, and we started off with your first wife, Krista, and you had mentioned that, and it's different because you kind of knew that there was an end, and it was going to be sooner than later. But with Jason and some of these other, there wasn't that time to brace yourself. It just, there it is. It happened. So, it's a different, people passing away at any age, at any time is difficult, and people mourn in different ways. But, when it's sudden like that, and it's somebody that's 28 years old, it's just, it's surreal, especially a guy that you thought was just, immortal. I mean, it's just, that's what's so crazy about it. And I do really appreciate it. And I know people are going to love, hearing your thoughts and expressions about him. And the reason, for all this, was that story of that 95-96 team. And you guys, obviously state runner up the year before, but you get a little bit of assistance come over in Jon Powell, a kid that had transferred in, and I think I forgot what Jon Powell looked like, but geez Louise, he was looked like a Greek god.
He'd probably tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
Jon Powell was a great talent. We knew, I knew Jon from middle school. We actually went to Chaminade Julien's basketball camps at the same time. So that means we all knew him from an early age. And he ended up at Middletown Christian. But he was always coming over to open gyms and whatnot. We were all, with Coach Ricciuto being at CJ, we were all kind of like CJ and Catholic Central during that time. We were all just kind of connected. We knew the players from there. They knew us really well. And so, Jon was kind of, it was kind of one of the guys. It wasn't like a new player,
right,
a new guy that we didn't know coming in. And I thought it was a great opportunity for Jon because he was a great basketball player. And I feel like he, with the attention that we were getting, and it was the right move for him to come over and be a part of that for his future.
Yeah, for those of you guys that are familiar with basketball, present day basketball, his son had an incredible freshman season, Jonathan Powell, at Dayton CJ, led him back to the state tournament this year. Was really a kid that not a lot of people knew about, kind of came out of nowhere. Didn't really start the year off as a major contributor to them, and then he just really surfaced. But yeah, I guess I just didn't connect the two, and then finally made that connection, and it makes sense now. But yeah, he comes over. You guys, this is a team that was 24-3. You were 9-3 at one point in the season. You ended up winning 15 straight to end the season. And I just want to go through some of these major, games that stuck out to me from that season. And the first one was right off the start in the Tip-Off Classic there at Centerville. And when you look at this final score, and if you're not familiar with what happened, you're like, did somebody hold the ball here? Was it like 30-12 or something like that? Why does this game end 30-12?
We were in Centerville's tournament, a great tournament to start with. So we played Centerville right out of the gates. We're up 28-12 midway through the third quarter. So it was still like a slower paced game. Centerville had slowed it down a little bit. Jon Powell throws an alley-oop to Jason Collier, and Collier destroys the backboard. And there is, if you can find it, there still is a news clip out there that has a beautiful angle of it that shows the glass just pouring down on Jason. Ended up with 22 stitches, had a cut in his head. They actually had talks of trying to play it in the auxiliary gym, which would have been a heck of a story, right?
Yeah.
But I think the conclusion, Kurt, was that the auxiliary gym rims were not breakaways, and they were afraid of it happening again. And there was also, a ton of people there.
Right.
So the game ended, and they called the game at 30-12, and then we had to bounce back and play a great Trotwood Madison team the next night.
Yeah, so you guys end up playing Trotwood, and they hand you the first loss of the season, 65-56. It looks like, and you would obviously be able to tell me better, this game kind of got away in the second quarter. They get a 20-8 advantage in the second quarter. Jason ends up with 26 and you 18 in this game, but there was a guy from Trotwood that was pretty good too that ended up with 21.
Yeah, Andre Hudson also played with AJ Granger at Michigan State. We had beaten Trotwood 2 or 3 times that summer. Andre was not. He was the only player that wasn't there. And they got a lead. They had a guard. I can't remember his name. That was just very good. His guard did the guard did a great job against us. They built a lead and simply just sustained it. And I think having an athlete that was as skilled and as strong as Andre, it made it difficult for us to come back. We may have we ended up, I think, losing by 9. We didn't play very well. Like, we were not very happy leaving that game. However, we had 3 losses that year. There's only one of those 3 losses that I really feel like if we had a chance to do it again, I think we would have won. But we can talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. So you had mentioned Moeller. So you guys play Moeller. They come to your place this time. You beat them 54-51. I think they were ranked 5th in Division I at the time.
Mm-hmm.
The year prior, you had went down there and you broke their 35-game home winning streak. Now, this is an interesting part to me, and you mentioned this to me prior to this podcast, was Moeller had beaten LaSalle, I believe, twice that year, and LaSalle ends up winning the state championship in Division I that year.
Yeah, beating Moeller for the second time, especially that next year. We actually were. Jon Powell was unable to play that game as well, and so they had Jason Grunkemeyer, who I think went on to Miami, had a good career there. That was just a solidifying win. Like, it was just a one, not because of just the name Cincinnati Moeller. That certainly helped throughout the state. It was a unique score to see, but also they were very good. And they beat LaSalle twice. LaSalle goes on to win the Division I state championship. And that was a game where, like, we felt like we were a very good team. We certainly do the expectations. But that was one where we go, I think we could put ourselves up there as being one of the better teams in the state, regardless of division.
So you guys are 7-1, and you make a trip south to the Beach Ball Classic, which is still a very prestigious event in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. This would be the 15th annual Beach Ball Classic. And you guys get paired up against a pretty good player there in the first round of things. This gentleman scored 43 points on 18 of 27 shooting and ended up with 16 rebounds. You had told me you guys held him to 43.
That's right. We, that's the way we like to say it, is that we went in and go, if we can keep him at 45 or below, we've got a chance. We're still sad that they put Jason Collier and Kobe Bryant, our teams, against each other in the first round. Lower Merion versus Springfield Catholic Central, because I actually do believe that we were the second best team there. We just got matched up against them. Kerr, we could go 30 minutes on this one, and I think it's wildly entertaining. Here we are with all this hype. There's about 6,000 people at this arena in Myrtle Beach. Our coach, Tony Ricciuto, is Italian. So before the game, he's talking to Kobe Bryant. They're just having a conversation in Italian during warm-ups. And we still tease our coaching staff to this day. We're the only team in the country that decided not to double team Kobe Bryant that year. He obviously, he had a great game, and I think it's the one game that I actually wish we could get back. This one stings a little bit because I think it's the only time in our career, and I put this a little bit on myself as a point guard. It's the only time in our career, I believe, that we had a lead going into the fourth quarter and didn't win. We were up by 4, I believe, going into the fourth quarter. And, Kobe had his. He got his and was playing very, very well. But it was actually down the stretch. They had a guard, a redheaded guard. I forget his name now. That just hit 2 back-breaking threes under 2 minutes to go. That kind of put it away. But we were right there, and ended up losing 65-60. But it's already unique enough. Anytime you say you played against Kobe, like when I would tell my kids out here, my players, that I got to play against Kobe, and you can see a couple clips on an ESPN film and things like that of us playing against Kobe. They just love it. They just love it. It would be another thing to say that we beat Lower Merion, which I do believe that had we played our best game, we had an opportunity to do. That was, what a tournament. We ended up going the next round. We played Lakota. There wasn't a Lakota East or a Lakota West. We go all the way down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, just to play a team from Ohio, and beat Lakota pretty handily. Then played Myrtle Beach High School, which had a player that I think played professionally named Travis Spivey. Myrtle Beach High School we ended up beating by about 16 or 20, I think. Kobe Bryant won the dunk contest there. He was he was wrapped in a bandage the entire time because we were convinced he was just tired of signing autographs. It was already out there that like there was a chance he was going to commit to the NBA, and he was special. I still tease my mom to this day because she took so many pictures of that tournament, and I was announced on the all-tournament team right after Kobe Bryant was. So there I am for about 5 good minutes standing next to him, and we're having a conversation. He goes, "Hey man, they call you the sniper on the scouting report. He's like, you hit them from everywhere." And we had like a good conversation right there. No pictures. There's no proof that conversation ever happened.
Yeah. I was looking at this, and it's like, you guys played well. I mean, Collier has 22 and 15. You had 16, Powell 14. It was just that dry spell that you guys just couldn't buy a bucket. And it's crazy because you still only lost by 5.
Right. And it was still, with 2 minutes to go, it was still, it was still in contention. And, he just, Kobe found the right guy at the right time and hit 2 straight 3-pointers, I think back-to-back possessions that got us. But we're oddly, and it doesn't even feel comfortable to say this, we were actually pretty confident going into that game. Like we actually felt pretty good about our game plan, minus the not double teaming Kobe part of that thing. But he erupted. There's a reason why there's like 3 or 4 highlights versus Catholic Central and like all of his highlights that ever existed, because it was he had some moments, some good moments.
Now, did you tell me that you ended up getting to meet him or something somewhere down the line?
Yeah, back in 2018, I was at a conference in Washington D.C. that he was speaking at, and after he was done speaking, he was coming out. He had the people around him, but I just went up to him in a different way, because it's when you're, I'm not a starstruck individual as is, but like when you played against each other in high school, like you're just 2 guys that played against each other in high school.
Right.
So I went up and said hello, and I said, "Hey, Jason Ronai, Springfield Catholic Central, played with Jason Collier," and he remembered right away. We just had a brief little conversation. I asked him about the guard that hit the 2 threes against us, and he said, "Man, in a Kobe expression, he goes, 'You just brought me back 20 years, man.'" And it was a neat embrace, and got a little picture, and Kobe, like that story meant a lot to Springfield too. Like that was big. It was like big for our community. Like we were kind of on the map. Yeah. Playing against Kobe Bryant and Lower Merion. So it was neat to run back into him and kind of just embrace as 2 guys that just played against each other in high school.
You guys combined for what, 5 NBA championships?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
he takes me as a guy that would have probably remembered every small detail, a very intelligent guy, every small detail of any game that he ever played in, just knowing how he just was a tactician about everything.
Well, he started the show called Detail.
Yeah.
Just breaking down the game. I bet, and one of the tough losses for all of us as athletes and of that era, but just in general, was that, I really felt like Kobe, after basketball, had so much to give to kids via his teaching, via his voice, via his work ethic, via the Mamba mentality. And that's also very difficult to not see that play out. And I think that if you were to interview Kobe Bryant and say, "Let's talk about your senior year in high school," I don't think he would be one of those athletes that would say, "I don't remember." I think he would remember a lot. Yeah.
So you guys, as you mentioned, you finished this trip off very successfully. Jason Collier, 39 points against Lakota. Then you play Myrtle Beach with Travis Spivey, who played at Georgia Tech and Utah, and you beat them pretty handily. And then you come back and in game 12 of the season, you play a Catholic school out of Indiana with Carson Cunningham. and it looks like things got away from you there.
Yeah, that was a really interesting story. It was in the Coaxial National Hoops Classic from back then again, which basically brought in a bunch of outside teams to play against Ohio teams, and typically the Ohio team would have a player of name brand, if you will. So like Jason Collier on the team, and we were supposed to play DeMatha out of Maryland, and DeMatha I think was top 10 in the country at that time. And a blizzard hit the East Coast, so they were unable to come out and play. And so Andrean Catholic is a fill-in for that. So we didn't actually know as much about them. And they were ranked 9th in the state of Indiana at the time. Had a young man by the name of Carson Cunningham, who went on to Oregon State and then Purdue, and he's coaching right now. But just a tremendous talent as a point guard, and frankly, like they just kicked our butt. I mean, it was just it was one of those where I don't ever want to say that Catholic Central was ever complacent in any sort of way. I think we were built on rigorous practices, rigorous schedules. But on that day, we just weren't at our best. You can use all the excuses that you want, like we were supposed to play DeMatha, and it was a little bit of a letdown and so on and so forth. But frankly, like they were just, they had some depth. They had some, they played very well. We played very poorly, and they took advantage of it and kicked our butt. And I think Jason had already committed to Indiana at that time. They were an Indiana team that had a little bit of, that was their, put that on the locker room, put it on the poster board type thing. They wanted to send a message, and they certainly did.
Yeah, so that would be it. That would be the last time you would lose in this season. I do want to mention a couple of games that finished out the regular season. 2 conference games. You beat Versailles, who I believe was ranked number 1 in D3 at the time. You beat them at their place. You were telling me that was a sold-out game. And knowing that place, I absolutely believe it. Fans watching on game on TV in a classroom, and you beat them 77-62. That had to be a pretty rewarding win for you.
We showed up on the bus, and the entire parking lot was filled. We walked into the gym before the JV game, and the stands were everything was sold out. And so they had moved some. They said that they had moved some people into classrooms to kind of watch on the TV and whatnot. And they were a great team. They were undefeated at the time, ranked number 1 in Division III. It was probably one of the better games that we played. I think we were up. I think we were 24 of 25 at the free throw line.
Wow.
They played pretty well, but Jason Collier had 28. I had 25, and we were just very, very solid. 2 weeks prior, though, after we lost to Andrean Catholic, Coach Ricciuto basically put us through hell week the next week in practice. I mean, it was just it was relentless. I mean, we were that disappointed in ourselves. Coaching staff was that disappointed, and we basically went through like preseason conditioning again. And he was sending the message to us for sure. And there was never a harder week of practice that I've ever experienced than that week. And frankly, we just we got the message, and we played pretty well in conference after that.
And one of your last games of the regular season, game 18, you guys beat Miami East 76-50, and you might be asking, why am I mentioning a 26-point win? Well, Miami East goes on and wins the Division III state championship. You had mentioned that shot, so you had piqued my curiosity, and I went back and dug a little bit on that one, and it was a game against undefeated Seaman North Adams. In the semifinals, a kid named Vince Littlejohn hits a running 3, 1-footer at the buzzer. Questionable. I need to get my hands on that tape. And then they turn around and beat another undefeated team, Archbold, in the finals. And this is a team that had 7 losses in the regular season. They were unranked. You guys blow them away here, 76-50. And they were in your conference, right?
They were. Well, it was a great year for that conference. Miami East, that shot that they hit, I think in the semifinal, that was, questionable as to whether or not it should have counted or not. Certainly shouldn't be a stain on the incredible run that they made. They were state champions. They won.
Right.
And they beat Versailles, who was also in our conference in the regional final. But we played them at Miami East and another packed crowd. I don't know if there was a game that we played actually, other than maybe like in Myrtle Beach that wasn't sold out that year. Our JV team got to play in a full house almost every single night, and we played really well against Miami East, and they were still finding themselves. But then for them to go on and win the state championship certainly made our portfolio and resume look that much better. As we got into going into the semifinal, there was a gentleman in the stands that started going through. The OHSA does a great job with their programs, right? You get to see all the scores, and you begin the score comparison. And he started looking at like Miami East, and he started looking at Westerville North, which is connected to Cardington Lincoln, who we played in the semifinal, like all these different scores. And he looked at us and he's like, God, are you guys that good? And I remember Tony Silvers and and Tommy Hannon are sitting all next to each other and just go, you're just gonna have to wait and see. And great portfolio win versus Miami East. I'm glad they went on to win the state champ. To have 2 Southwestern Rivers Conference, but doesn't exist anymore. The SRC doesn't exist anymore. To have 2 state champions from the same conference that only had 8 teams in the conference is pretty neat.
So you guys get into sectional play, beat up on Tri-Village and Franklin Monroe. The district tournament, you beat Cincinnati Seven Hills 70-38. And then a game that we discussed prior to getting on this podcast against Cincinnati Madeira in the regional semis. And the dream almost came to an end in front of 6,900 at UD Arena, courtesy of Jim Reynolds, who was a great strategic head coach. He's out in Arizona now. I think he won a state championship out there. And Jason Collier hit some free throws with 8.2 seconds to go. He had a big night, 25 points, 12 rebounds, 4 blocks. You were playing a Madeira team that had come into this game winning 16 straight, and things got a little dicey. Final score was 39-38. They hit a 3, kind of a window dressing 3 at the end, but things were tight, and this was a game you led by double digits early.
For Jim Reynolds and Jay Newberry and anybody else that, if they ever get a chance to listen to this from Madeira, if you want to see 18 individuals from Catholic Central's basketball team all head drop, just mention that name. We, in Harry Potter, they say, he who not be named. Like Madeira is that high school that not be named by us, because that was we still, like, it was as exaggerated as this sounds. It was traumatic for us. They had an incredible game plan. We also didn't play very well at all, with the exception of Jason. Jason just carried us. Jason Collier carried us throughout. We were up 30-19 going into the fourth quarter. I saw Jim Reynolds some years ago at the state tournament, because I still try to go with my dad and my brother. And he told me that years after that, they used to show their basketball camps the film of what it was like to run a motion offense and a passing game and a movement game that also was taking time off the clock. It was a thing of beauty. We were a pressured defense team. We would extend on you, and they just did an incredible job of making us play for a minute 15, minute and a half, kind of wearing us down and staying close. It was the perfect game plan. They took so much time off the clock, but they weren't holding the ball at half court. They were just wearing us down, wearing us down, wearing us down. They were sending multiple guys at me, 90 feet, and really, it took me out of my game. It was the worst game that I ever played in high school, and they did a great job of taking me almost completely out of it. And luckily, we had a 7-footer that carried us. They, after being up 30-19 going in the fourth quarter, I look up, they chipped away, and Madeira has a 35-34 lead over us with a little under 2 minutes to go. And I still remember Collier hit a couple big clutch free throws. I think we were up 37-35 with 25-ish seconds to go. And they had an inbounds play from half court, and they threw it in. And we rarely made mistakes of over risking and cheating through the lane, but we went for a steal and missed. And Jay Newberry grabs it with nobody around him at the top of the key. I'm not sure how many 3-point shots he took. He may not have taken any 3-point shots that year, but he pulls up and he's going to take that game-winning shot. And I've never seen a shot that took so long to get to the rim and to see it all, like everything flashing before our eyes, all the expectations, all the work that we had put in going, this shot might go in. It didn't. Tyson Yirak gets an incredible rebound, great rebound. And we ended up, we had a trap, even being up, I think 2 or 3, we ended up trapping them in the back court, and they turned it over in the last few seconds of the game, which helped us. We wanted to get out of UD Arena as quick as we possibly could. We've never watched the film. We don't want to watch the film. We had some guys, no question, that including myself, who were in tears in the locker room as to what almost just happened. We would never be doing that podcast had they done what they almost did to us that night.
Yeah, that would completely change the story. But nonetheless, as I mentioned earlier, at some point in the tournament run, you're going to have to escape. I mean, there's so few teams that just bludgeon everybody that they play. There's so many good teams in Ohio, so many great coaches, and that's the beautiful thing about the game. But you do escape, and you play South Charleston Southeastern. In the regional final, you beat them 59-40 to return to the state tournament for a second year in a row. Now you get to the state tournament, and you got an interesting draw. You got Cardington-Lincoln. This game would be a sellout, 13-276. Cardington-Lincoln came in with some well-known guys. The Levering brothers, Adam and Andy. Andy was a second-team All-Ohioan with you. And then, Tom Kenny, I believe, was a first-team All-Ohioan, a 6'9" center. And he didn't have a whole lot of success in the game against you. He ended up with 3 points. Adam Levering had 12, Andy with 13, and John Otterbacker had 12. But it just wasn't enough. You guys just throttled these guys, 86-54. Jason had 24, you had 20, and Jon Powell had 15. Really the story here, you guys annihilated these guys on the board, 48-28, and you were 10 for 19 from 3. I think that was kind of the story here.
Yeah, after Madeira, we played well against Southeastern. They had a similar game plan of trying to slow some things down, but Tyson, Tommy, Tony, Jon Powell had great games against Southeastern. We just began, we got over that one hump, and then we just played. Prior to the Cardington-Lincoln, what was neat about that, Jason Collier was just named Mr. Basketball in Ohio. Jason was the big name in the state at that time. Mr. Basketball was a big deal. And I remember, the 90s were like the great era of ticket scalping at St. John Arena. Right?
Yeah.
It was the science to it, kind of a beautiful thing to watch from afar. And I remember hearing that prior to that game against Cardington-Lincoln, tickets were going for 100, 125, 150 to get into that game. And it was it was neat because we actually felt that many people were there to see us. Tom Kinney, in an article prior to the game, has what I think is close to an exact quote was, "I would be lying if I said I didn't want to drop step dunk on Jason Collier." And that was put right on the door for us that week in practice. And we just, I mean, probably 2 or 3 of the best quarters that we played all year. I think we were up 12-0 in the first. I know we were up 2-0 in the first, or excuse me, 10-0 in the first 1:30 of the game. And I mean, there was a point in which I think we were up 41-14. We played our very best basketball, I think, at the right time then.
So you guys move on to a game where you lost 70-51 the prior year to Liberty Benton, which we talked about. And this game was interesting. So you're up against, quote unquote, the #1 team in the state, undefeated Van Wert Lincoln View. You know, and no disrespect to those guys, they were great in their own right. They didn't play near the schedule that you guys had played. But interesting enough, if you look at the final score of this game, 75-52, you played in front of 12,712. When you look at the final 75-52, and if I told you that you were down 40-37 with 4:37 in the third, you'd say, no way that's the final score. And you go on a 38-12 run to end this game, spurred by a big 21-2 run where Collier has 10 points in the run. Jon Powell has 8 in the run. And you guys just exploded. What happened at that 4:37 mark of the third that was like just a tale of 2 different games?
I think the last quarter and a half, I think that I think our entire starting 5 and really like our top 6 players, counting Jon Powell, I think we just comprehensively played well together. Tommy Hannon hit a couple threes in the fourth quarter that was on that run. Collier played great that game, and I think everybody just everybody contributed. But it's interesting because I appreciate. I listened to the podcast with Brandon and about Lincoln View and what an incredible era that they had. And I also appreciate that, similar to what I would say about Liberty Benton the year before, Brandon was, kind of concluded that, we were just better. And not to sound arrogant in any sort of way. I don't think it was ever in doubt for us. I think it was a matter of time before we really kind of found that run, found that pace, found what we needed to do. Now, I mean, I was, pleasantly surprised at how much of a run we made against them. But I think once we got to that place, I think we were similar to Liberty Benton the year before. We just weren't a team that was going to give up that lead. Once we found that crack, we just ran right through it and then played well the duration of the game after that.
So you end up with 18 points in this game, Collier 22, Jon Powell was 16. We talked to Pardon a few weeks ago. He had 21 points in this game playing with the goggles and the epic, the epic goggles story. You shoot 54% from the field in this game, 9 for 17 from 3, which was a big story for you guys throughout your career there. 19 of 36 from 3 in the state tournament. That's pretty doggone good. And you yourself, big 3-point maker in state tournament games. Shout out to one of my Twitter followers, Kyle, who guessed you as the guy that hit 16 threes in your 4 state tournament games. Of course, 7 of those coming in 1 game, but still 16 threes in 4 games at St. John Arena. Not too many people can claim that. And you capture the state championship, and this was your fourth try in 8 seasons, first Springfield Catholic Central, and you finally get the job done. As we close this out, and you win the state championship, obviously with the margin at this size that you knew that you were going to win prior to the final buzzer. What do you think back on in those closing moments with your teammates?
Yeah. Well, prior to the game, Coach Ricciuto had said, this is the last time this basketball team's ever going to get together. And we actually were, it was a somber moment. I remember looking up at Coach Ricciuto in warmups, and like, he just kind of had his head down because we had put so much time together, incredible amount of time. And we knew it was coming to an end. And so now Coach Ricciuto, he was very big. If you look at a lot of our scores, like, we actually didn't beat a lot of teams by 50 points. And he was very good about calling off the dogs and making sure that we kept it respectable. And there's plenty of times that I think that could have happened. Only on our senior night, I think we won by about 50 points, but that was also senior night. It was an event, right? And he also wanted us, he said something to us on the bench because we called a timeout to get the substitutions in. He said, let's go shake hands right away. He wanted us to, he just wanted us to go shake hands first. And Collier and I look at each other, and he just looks at me and I look at him. And he's like, no, we're running out there. And so Collier leads this great pile in the center of the court. And we all jump on him. And a great story from after the game. We actually had the late game, and so there was nobody left in St. John Arena when we came out of the locker room. And Coach Weckeser and Coach Falkenbach, before practices, used to shoot these over the head half-court shots. We would always have some fun with it. We decided, we knew it was our last time. We actually went out after the game at St. John Arena, grabbed a couple basketballs, and went back through layup lines. And Weckeser and Falkenbach get out there, and I kid you not, Kurt, as only the story could be, they go to half court at St. John Arena, back to back swishes over the head half court shots, and they're going to be so happy that I said that. By the way, we leave the arena and we're dancing on top of our vans, and the whole community is following us back to the hotel. And what an event. What a very, very special event. That community really embraced us, did everything they could to make sure that we were able to maximize who we are. And even it should be noted that probably the most underrated and untalked about teams ever at Catholic Central was the 1997 team that made it back to the Final Four. And we're talking, Robbie Moore and Matt Talbott and Chris Wells as juniors, did get some juniors and a sophomore, they got some time off the bench for us, but we graduated 8 seniors, and we were a very senior laden team. And so the team that we were playing against in practice every single day came out the next year, played another crazy schedule, and ended up making it back to the Final Four. So for that little era, you've got Chris Wells and Matt Talbott that actually played on Final Four team in 95, 96, and 97 is just a tremendous era of basketball for all of us.
Well, Jason, man, I appreciate you taking us back 25 years, talking us through the triumphs and tragedies of this Springfield Catholic Central story, your story. I have really thoroughly enjoyed this, and I hope that we did the good people from Springfield right with this, and I hope they enjoy it.
Yeah, I can't thank you enough. This is going to mean a lot to the community, and really, it's like I said, the amount of communication that we've been able to have as teammates, just to talk about being able to talk about this again has been really, really special. And that's a community that saw lightning in a bottle and they captured it, and a team that knew the expectations, were truthful about the expectations, and luckily for us, lived up to it, and just so very blessed and lucky that you're giving us the opportunity and giving me the opportunity to talk about such special people. So thank you, Kurt.
Well, maybe one day we'll do a podcast where we talk about you and Kobe's 5 championships together. So we can get that going.
I'm all over it. He and I combined for 81 points one night.
It was a great night. All right, Jason. Thank you very much, my man.
All right. Thank you, Kurt. Take care.
Bye.